Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Take Two. So in this episode, it turns out we have a very interesting case where it's like Sam and Eddie get caught up in a serial murder case, which is kind of interesting because obviously the victim in this episode, this particular victim that kind of gets them brought into the case, is a dude named Ken who hired him, which is like obviously is a little heart-wrenching all on its own because, like, you know, especially for Sam, like this is the first time she's ever, you know, for one, been part of like a case like this. Eddie's kind of done from time to time again, which is sad all on its own. That, you know, to the point even he had a comment like he's been a part of far too many investigations like that. But the fact of the matter is it's the first time Sam and him have ever had a client end up being killed, you know, at least, you know, in the confines of the show. Like Eddie might have come across it before, but this is definitely a first for Sam, so that's pretty rough. Basically, he was looking into his wife Allison's disappearance. At the same time, it seems like this is connected to a recent serial killer. You know, so I do like the constant changes in the story and the development. It's like trying to piece it all together about Ken. There was a mysterious talk that Allison had with somebody, but the data file was corrupted because someone tried to wipe her computer. And then it's like, oh, maybe it's connected to where Ken and Allison worked with this dude, Michael, who ends up being the latest victim in the situation. One of the leading suspects is this dude named Philip, who's got some medical issues. He might have been off his meds. So it's like potentially, and he wrote a poem to Allison. So it's like maybe he had like feelings for Allison or something that might have set him off. They go to his place. He's found hanging with all the souvenirs there. But for Eddie, it just didn't feel right because it seemed too easy. And so Berto ended up getting some surveillance footage because they went to the lawyers because it's like, oh yeah, Allison was in the lawyer's building talking about hiring a lawyer for like a criminal matter. And it turns out it's because this all dealt with her brother, Tim, who they had met with earlier in an episode, who just seemed like once again, kind of adds more to his like psychopathness because he was so calm, cool, and collected and was saying all this stuff like, man, I can't believe I thought my sister was gone, and now it's like, oh, like maybe, oh, I thought there was no hope, and now Ken's dead, and you think, oh, maybe there's a little hope that she's still alive. It's like he's saying all that now. We know like he was a part of this because Allison met with him at the hotel. He never told the police nor Eddie and Sam that he did that, so he's lying and covering that up. So it's like he's potentially, well, he's definitely the killer, obviously skipping around, just going straight to it. And I thought that added an interesting element to the episode of like they knew it and eventually he knew that they knew because he's like waiting for them in their office while they're talking about him. Like, oh, that's super creepy. And he's been like, let me offer you I'm like, oh, let me pay you. Like my, you know, Ken was going to pay you, so let me do it. It's like, no, we're good. It's like, oh, it's like, well, the investigation's not over. It's not. Who else do you suspect? And it's like, oh, why don't you take this job? I mean, if you took this job working security for me, both of you, you'd have to stop this investigation. I'm like, okay. And then like Sam was like, oh, let me get a water bottle for you. He's like, no, I'm still thirsty. And he's like, oh. Then there's the fact is he called Eddie's private phone. He's talking about Sam's with you, isn't she? It's like, the fact of the matter is you should consider my offer. I hate this to be the end of everything. And it's just like, dude, it added this spooky element to it. Even to the point, like, I guess that really was just somebody driving by in the car, like the shadow of a car or something, because we saw it. And I love that moment of just being almost like this spooky element of like Eddie being like, what did you see? Because Sam was freaked out because it's like, what if you could, like, I fit the victims. So it's like, what if I'm the next person? Because it's actually super sad and messed up because it turns out all the victims, except for the ones like Ken was about because Ken had the video and stuff like that. That was evidence. So try to get rid of Ken because he was stirring up too much trouble, and then kill the dude Michael from the LA outreach as well, just to kind of throw it off so they won't try and find any, like, it throws off the reason why he killed Ken. So it just shows you how much of a psychopath he is too, because it's like, for one, he killed all these women because they looked like his mom. His mom abandoned him and Allison when they were 12, left them with their abusive dad, and it was a whole debacle in itself because it's like they were finally taken away by child services after a while, but it's like for such a long time no one did anything for them. And that's what the symbol and the eyes were about. They were stick figures that he drew of his dad all those years ago when he was younger. So that's what this was all about. And once again, killing Michael was just to kind of throw off the lead and also lead to them going after Philip. So that's someone else he killed. It's something interesting because when the time came, Eddie never brought it up in conversation. Like he found out from Mick, like obviously when him and Mick were talking about like the cut on Philip's wrist, were cut most likely tendons. So there's no way he'd had the strength needed to strangle the people like he did, but it never came up in conversation when he was explaining things to Chris and Jay. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Like he was pointing out all the other evidence, but he didn't point out that. But to be fair, I don't think Jay would have listened anyway, because that was kind of interesting. You could tell Jay was kind of giving him a hard time. I was like, is this about the dirty cows? I felt like it had to be. And it's like, but why would that kind of piss you off? Because even Eddie's like, it's like, I broke the blue veil. It's like in a situation like that, like there's an aspect to that where you're kind of like, it's a situation where you need to break the blue veil because it's, I guess at the same time, it's a situation of like, in someone else's eyes, it's like they're fellow cops. How can you snitch on other cops? Even if they're doing something bad, they're not doing too many bad things. But it's like that's a slippery slope. You start off doing something that's not so bad, and eventually you start getting away with more and more. And then it's like, well, where do you draw the line? But Jay's personal reason for hating him so much is because Jay's brother was one of the people. And it's like, so you're blaming Eddie for your brother's fault. That lied on him. Like, I'm more so than anything, you should be mad at your brother for being a dirty cop. But it's just like, it's like, no, like, I guess it's like, you should have come to me. I would have handled it or something. Maybe that's his thought process. Like, we would have handled it in-house. You didn't have to report this to anyone else, Because he had talked about it earlier in the episode where Jay was kind of like, saying that Eddie's got his issues, and the fact of the matter is, like, Eddie's the worst or something like that. We know that you're the worst. I forgot exactly what his exact words, but it was something borderlining like that. Like, you could tell he was implying about this situation. And because of that, he was being a little hard-headed about the situation. He did come through in the end because he did listen. He's like, yeah, we still got our issues, but hey, at the end of the day, you did okay on this case. It's like, I love how you said he did okay. Like, him and Sam rocked this case. I thought it was kind of an interesting thing, too, because Berto kind of blamed himself because he felt like, I got so ahead of myself. I thought when I got the LA outreach lead, I thought I helped solve the case, but I was just following the clues that Tim had left behind. The fact of the matter is, I was just falling in his trail and he almost got away. Because the only reason why this kept going is because Eddie kept pursuing it. What Sam brought up, an interesting thing I thought was kind of neat, was like neat in an interesting storytelling purpose. That you're thinking like, oh, because he enjoyed being back kind of in part of a big investigation like this, it made him feel like being a cop again. So maybe he was kind of making excuses just so he can keep working the case some more. But it's like, no, I'm working this because I don't think we got the right guy. I want to make sure that the right person pays for this, So I kind of brought it up earlier, but I let it slip my mind, was when he was staying with Sam. It's kind of interesting. They made sure not to play too much into that. But obviously, I mean, it's not like the first time he's stayed over at Sam's place. Non being drugged by FBI agents, So in this particular case, like the whole, like her seeing something, like it turned out not to be, like it never turned out to be anything. So I guess she was right about it just being like something, like might have been a bird flying by the window or something. I thought that was kind of neat. Like I said, just adding that layer of uneasiness and spookiness because Tim was very scary and just his approach and his demeanor throughout the whole episode, especially every time he talked to them, just being more and more creepy, especially when it's all said and done at the end of the episode, him being like, Eddie's like, you're going to be put away for a long time. You're never getting out. He's like, we'll see. And I'm like, yeah, because it's even something Allison had talked about. Like, the fact of the matter is he has power and connection. So I'm curious if they're going to do that or not. Maybe not. But the whole aspect of like, maybe he'll run into Deacon and that might be a connection type of thing with his power or resources, with Deacon's powers and resources. Like, oh, you could be an ally I could use. I don't know. That might be something we see, but I feel like we're not done with this Tim thing the way they kind of left it open-ended like that. Seemed like he's going away, but I get the inkling like, oh, there's definitely going to be more to that sort, but we'll have to wait and see. Because what Berto ended up finding out is like the reason why he was able to find all his victims is because of a company he owns, or his company owns another company that does data mining, is how he was able to track down all his people. And it's like, not everything fit with the puzzle, and because I didn't pursue that particular avenue of thinking, he was almost able to get away from it. But Monica was like, I didn't, I missed the signs too, so don't, just blame yourself, But ultimately, they were able to kind of track this all back to where he potentially could be hiding Allison. And the sad thing is, too, that Allison blames herself, because for her, it's like, I went off and was happy. I got married and kind of left my brother to his vices. Like for her, she was always able to help calm his rage, but she was kind of off on her own and her brother kind of like seeped into the shadows. So that's probably even more motivation for him to kill Ken too, because it's like, oh yeah, you took my sister away from me. Like I'm sure. I mean, it's more so like, oh, Ken had evidence, but I'm sure maybe on some level that played aspect to it, because it's like, you're not going to take away the only other person family I have, you know? Because even when it was all said and done, he never did kill her. So it's because she was there. She was by his side during everything with their dad. So obviously he loves her. So he would never hurt her. Because there was a part of me that was thinking the entire episode was like, oh my, she's in on it, isn't she? Like that's what I was kind of assuming, but it turns out not to be the case at all. So it is interesting because we do have the avenue of like Jay's like, oh yeah, the chief is kind of like, yeah, because you didn't embarrass us, you didn't really ask for anything, you didn't try and take any of the glory for this case. Obviously, might want to think you what you want in the future. He's kind of like, and he basically talks to Sam about it because later on, because earlier Sam had asked him why he became a cop, and it turns out it's because his dad had a business and people kind of pushed him around and burned his business to the ground, and that was a moment that Eddie decided he wanted to be a cop. And seeing those dirty cops abusing the power made him think of that moment. He wanted to protect those who didn't have the power to protect themselves. So, and the whole darkness avenue of this job, Eddie took comfort in knowing that he was doing good. And did he ever think about wanting to be a cop again? And I think part of him, he even says it like, yeah, he did, but he liked being a cop because of what it represented, the good that it meant. But if it was like, the fact is that it was tarnished so much because of all the dirty cops, and he got punished for doing the right thing. So I think to him that kind of takes away from the cop. Like he gets blacklisted by a lot of cops because of that avenue of like doing the right thing. Yeah, but it's like, no matter what the circumstances, you never turn on another cop, no matter even if it is you doing the right thing. So, but it does leave it open and like, hey, you could be a cop again. But I thought it was kind of an interesting parallel. They didn't necessarily make the same account, but obviously back to back, like last episode, Sam talked about the fact that she didn't want to go back to doing the show all about Ava, the remake, because for her, it would have meant going backwards. Eddie doesn't really, he tells about it to a certain extent, but he didn't make the parallels. But I think it's kind of interesting, these episodes being back to back like that. But like her making a choice not to go backwards, and for him to make the choice to not go backwards because he likes where he is now. Because for him, the one thing that protects you from the darkness that comes with that job is having a partner that always has your back, and he has Sam. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. He even gave her, what was it? It was like a necklace that had like a saint on it, and it's like, yeah, kind of has all each one of his partners has always had one, and now Sam has one. So I thought that was kind of a pretty nice. Like I said, it's just both of them not willing to go backwards because where they are right now, they like where they are, and because even if he did get his job back, it would be that situation of everyone would always there'd be a little bit of a like stink eyes from other people. Even things between him and Jay aren't 100% copacetic, so it's kind of like, yeah, he's kind of fine where he is, and I think he does a better job where he is now. So at least that's my opinion. So I thought that was kind of a nice episode, kind of like tied all together. Like I said, ultimately we'll see whether anything comes about the whole Tim situation. Like I said, the whole Deacon situation is still there. So those two lanes could end up converging, but maybe not. But still definitely feel like there's more to that Tim thing. Do note that there won't be an episode next week, but there will be one the week after next on August 30th. So do keep that in mind. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good